Amen. All right. We're getting closer to finishing Romans. Now, of course, there are still some of you that now you're bored, and yeah, I bored you again today, and you didn't learn anything. And all right, so this is called the Afterburn. And so if you have comments or questions, you can go ahead and raise your hand here. And Owen's going to come around with the mic. If you're on the live stream, Rob, and okay, Rob's going to take care of the live stream. And we'll try to get the comments and questions, in as many as we can. Okay, I know we covered a lot today. Okay, and we'll begin with Candace. Candace, go ahead.
Rabbi, I like this teaching very much because for many years I have gone around thinking the thought, why did Yahweh choose me? I mean, my sister has been walking with him she's a Christian. In her own way, she's been walking with him the best that she knew how. And she's been an inspiration to me. But Yahweh called me on this path, and I just kept questioning. And I think in ways I was kind of arguing with him, and without realizing that's what I was doing. But today I realize I just need to thank him for choosing me and letting me walk this walk. So.
Amen. Amen. Exactly. Okay? That's exactly the point to get out of this, is that say thank you, not say why didn't you, why now, why didn't you do it early, why? Just say thank you. Because he could have left you where you were. Okay? But he poked you, disturbed your peace, and brought you out of all that mess. Who's next? Okay, live stream. Either I was very thorough, or a lot of people are just sitting there like deer in the headlights, stunned. Okay.
Deer in the headlights, stunned.
Okay, there you go. I was a little strong today, I guess. All right, Rob, what do we got?
Only got one so far from Olivia and Janet Hoffman.
I could have guessed. If you told me it was only one. Hi, Janet. Okay, go ahead.
Chapter 9, verse 28. Would you please elaborate on this verse? Thank you.
No. Okay, next question. Okay, what is it? Romans 9:28? For he is bringing a matter to an end and is cutting it short in righteousness, because Yahweh shall cut short a matter on the earth. Okay, yeah, I didn't kind of get into that yet. In Romans 11 and other places, and then also in Ephesians we talk about it. He's bringing an end to a place and a time where there was this enmity that was going on between the Jew and the Gentile. He was trying to make the one new man. We could also look at it from the bigger picture that at some point in the end times, he's bringing this whole era to an end, and we'll cut that short. Because remember, he says that if he doesn't cut it short, all flesh would be destroyed, and none would be saved alive. All right? So we have both of those things going on. And actually, I probably should look over here. So we have both of those things going on, Janet. Okay. I always look over there. When we get our new place set up, we need to have the live stream guys right behind the camera, so I'll look this way. I always feel compelled to look at Rob because he's asking the question. But go ahead.
Okay, from Angelic Ewan says, how do we know what his voice sounds like, especially because in mainstream Christianity, it's presented that the Holy Spirit is his voice?
Okay, look, there are all kinds of teachings out there throughout mainstream Christianity. One of them is called, knowing the Father's voice, or these kind of things. Look, find yourself an anointed, appointed, and get under that leadership. What you think Yahweh's saying to you, run it by that leadership. And then you'll learn to recognize his voice. You'll also learn to recognize his voice if you really know the word. If you have a relationship with the word, you'll recognize when the voice is in line with that and when it's not. Because remember, I've talked about this all the time. All of us are crazy. We all have at least 3 voices in our head. At least 3. You've got your own voice. You got Hasatan's voice, the enemy's voice, right? And you've got that small, still voice, the still, quiet voice of the Ruach, of the Spirit. And so, how do you know which one's which? All of them are trying to pretend they're the same voice. Okay? There used to be a show where it was like, well, the real so-and-so, please stand up, you know? Was the whole line, right? And they had 3 people all claiming to be the same person. And the celebrities had to guess which one was the real person. But that's kind of what's going on in your head. You got 3 voices all trying to convince you they're his. You want what you want, so it's going to try to convince you that it's his voice that says you can have it. The enemy wants you to have what you want, especially if it's not what Yahweh said, so he's going to convince you. And then there's the voice of Yahweh waiting for the other 2 to be quiet. And so you're going to have a struggle with that until over time in practice you'll start to recognize the differences. And having somebody help you through that is going to make it a whole lot easier. Okay, any other questions?
From Olivier Hoffman, Romans 8:26 through 27. Am I understanding correctly that the Spirit is Yeshua?
Romans 8. Right, because remember, that was talking about the Spirit. And remember, at this point in Romans 8, which we should all agree comes after John 14 and comes after Yeshua is buried and resurrected, John 14 makes it clear that, well, we should go back and read that again. He says, if you love me and guard my commands, I shall ask the Father, and he shall give you a helper, another helper to stay with you forever, the Spirit of truth, whom the world is unable to receive because it does not see him or know him, but you know him, for he stays with you and shall be in you. He's saying, look, the world doesn't recognize that this thing is here already. It's me. But he stays with you and shall be in you. So he's already with you, but the world doesn't recognize me as who I am. He says, I shall not leave you orphans. I am coming to you. There's lots of other places where it talks about that same idea. We talk about this in the Ruach teaching, in the Understanding the Ruach teaching. So he's saying, look, he says, he who searches the hearts, the Father knows what the mind of the Spirit is because he makes intercession, and we know that all matters work together for the good. And he goes, because those who I guess we start in verse 26. And in the same way, the Spirit does help us in our weaknesses. So who's the helper? Yeshua. So we already have the hint. The Spirit that's helping us. Yeshua. And it says that the Father knows the mind of the Spirit. He says, my Father and I, we think alike. He says, everything I say, everything I do is what he says I should think and do. And so we have that connection there. So he's referring to Yeshua in you. But that's hard to explain to people when they're trying to embrace a Messiah who just died in their lifetime and then was resurrected. Then none of these people were there to see it. They weren't living near when it happened, where it was. They're trying to, hopefully believe Paul and trust Paul's words because he's bringing this word or this message to them where they are down in Rome. Yeshua didn't die in Rome. And so they weren't there for these events. Paul wasn't either. But he's bringing this witness to them. And so he's having a hard enough time getting them to connect that up than to say in a much more bizarre way, you already think I'm crazy, Paul's thinking, but to say that this is Messiah who's in you, who's doing these things. Does that make sense to you now? Does it make more sense to everyone? Okay. Go back and listen to the Understanding the Ruach teaching. All right, and the Father-Son teaching, and kind of get those pieced together. All right, what's next?
Okay, from Olivier Giant Hoffman. Also, I guess it says also the last verse, please, Rabbi, chapter 10, verse 17. We received so many wrong teachings from the churches. Please, can you elaborate on this? And then also from Marianne Gibson, it says, I'm having an issue with 10:17. You said something different. My book says the word of Messiah.
Okay, so at the end it says, and so the belief comes by hearing and hearing by the word of Elohim or word of Messiah. I'm going to start next week. I'm going to be starting from verse 14 anyway, okay? Because I want to really get into more about those that are sent and anointed, appointed, and some of those things that he's talking about here. So I'm going to start back in verse 14 anyway, so that we kind of have that context, all right? And I may even start a little bit before that with this whole idea of who shall be saved, but that whole thing about who shall be saved is in the Are You Saved teaching, okay? Yeah, but I'm going to go into this whole idea. How shall they call upon him in whom they have not believed? How shall they believe in him in whom they have not heard? Then he goes into and how shall they hear without one proclaiming? And then we get to verse 17. So then belief comes by hearing, and hearing by the word, etc. So let me kind of flesh that out for you, whatever the word is. Let me get that more clear next time. Okay? By the way, I'll give you a little hint right here. Belief comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of Elohim. If we make that a capital W, the word of Elohim opens your ears. Yeshua is the word, and so he helps you with the hearing. I just got that when I was saying it, so let me just write that down. I'm going to underline it so I know, and I'm going to make that W capital. Okay, there. Okay? So maybe that's a piece of it, but let's just see what the Ruach gives me to say next week when we'll start there. Okay, what else? We got to have a lot more because the Rebbetzon's in the room, and we always go short when she's in the room. So when she's with the children and they're driving her crazy, we go long, but when she's in here, we go short. Happens every time. Are we done?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, I got from Caramel Woman. Romans 9:33 says, "Is God allowing the confusion or warning us of it?"
Okay, this whole thing in verse 33, I get to name another teaching. What teaching do I get to name? It's talking about a rock. Yeshua the rock. Okay? So you might want to go back and listen to that teaching, Yeshua the rock. Look, he's talking about how Yeshua is a stone of stumbling for both houses, for both parts. Okay? The Jew and the Gentile both have a problem with Yeshua and not understanding him. The Jew doesn't understand Yeshua as Messiah in the fullness of comprehension of that, and the Gentile doesn't understand him as the walking, talking Torah. Okay? So it causes people to stumble. They're not understanding. Okay, but I explained that in much more detail in Yeshua the Rock, I believe. I haven't done that teaching in a very long time, so I don't remember. But I'm pretty sure it's covered in that teaching. It was? Okay. You're just saying it's been a long time. Oh, it was a good one. Okay, thank you. All right. What else we got?
Okay, this is from Leanne. She's asking a question on John 14. She's gone through the teaching on the doctrine of grace, but she has a question. She's still confused. It says, please clarify, if Yahweh chooses whom he will have mercy upon, then it would seem our works are not merited favor. Or does Messiah clarify that in John 14?
Read it to me one more time.
Okay. If Yahweh chooses whom he will have mercy upon,
Yep.
then it would seem our works are not merited favor. Or does Messiah clarify that in John 14?
Well, I'm not so sure how Messiah clarifies. It doesn't clarify it in John 14, but remember what I said here in this teaching today, though, in Romans. Okay, he has compassion or mercy on those who he has it on, or gives favor to those because he knows we will merit the favor. He knows in advance what we will do when he calls us. He knows the end from the beginning. And so he called you knowing you would walk this out, knowing you could run the race, knowing you could, not that you would, but that you could complete it. Because not everybody chooses after they're called to actually walk this all out. But he knew you could do it. Does that make sense, hopefully, to Leanne? I hope it does. Okay? It's hard for us to deal with the ideas and concepts related to being outside of time. Okay, where Yahweh understands and knows beforehand what you'll do. I mean, he can see all of it play out in advance. He knows if I do this little ripple and thing, this is what will happen. This is how that can play out. This is what that person will do. He knew. That's why he went and selected David HaMelech. He knew what David would do. That's why he picked everybody along the line. He knew what they would do. He picked Moses. He knew what he would do. He picked Jacob over Esau because he knew what he would do. Because time is a linear thing for us, not so with Yahweh. That's really hard for us to wrap our brains around. Remember the metaphor, amoeba, human being, you know? We're like an amoeba trying to understand a human being is like a human being trying to understand what Yahweh does, okay? Anybody else? I know Sarah Beth has her hand up, but let's see if there's anything else on the live stream. No? Okay, Owen, bring it over to Sarah Beth.
Thank you. Comment on this kind of subject. It does kind of have that whole like confusing, wait, what? But it reminded me so much of work, both past jobs and this one. Everybody's beating up on the boss. The boss does just random decisions for no reason, yada, yada, yada. The boss is always making weird decisions. But then you go into management and you see the boss, yeah, they're all not perfect, but they have a system for why they make the decisions they do. They see things differently than you do. They see everybody. They see people's potential. They're judging each person by what they see and every little thing they see, and they learn how to judge people. And they do a really good job, and virtually everything they do is planned and on purpose.
Yep.
If you would just know how they're seeing it, you could work with them and be promoted.
Amen. Amen. Look, even people that work here, you know, who spend some time here, can see they start to see how I operate in that leadership position and how I have a sort of a more global picture, a zoomed out picture, and the things that I'm doing fit into some things that maybe you can't see yet or don't understand yet, but there's a reason for them. And that's where remember we talked about those who have already can see it, right? Then if they can see it, they don't have an expectation. Because they already know, so what's there to expect? They just know what's going to happen. But we have an anticipation, expectation, because we can't see it, but we have to trust. That's something that has to be done with husbands and fathers and leaders. Same thing with children, with mothers too. Can you trust the leadership, whatever that leadership is, that even though you can't see it, they can see it? Christina?
So I was hesitant to ask this question because I feel like I'm going to open a can of worms. But
Well, you need to, because we got a lot of time to kill, so Rebbetzin doesn't feel like we're short.
okay, well, this one's a doozy. Okay, so the verse is about he has favor who he wants to have favor on. In the Christian church, when I was there, they used those as scripture for the whole theology of predestination.
Right.
And so I'm kind of curious as to how that all plays into it. Yes, of course, I feel very fortunate that Yahweh, like Candace has expressed, that he called me out into the path that I'm on right now. But then I also think about all of the friends and family that I have and that all of us have, and it kind of makes me wonder about how that all plays into it at the same time. And then there's also the other side where there's a lot of people who will say, well, you know, they'll take one of two approaches. They'll be like, oh, well, I'm the person that has been called out, and they'll kind of puff themselves up, and then they say, okay, well, those people are going to be burned up. Or they'll go to the other side of it, and they'll say, well, why do I want to serve a God who would do that? And so I don't even know if that's too much to go into right now.
Actually,
but I kind of want to.
Okay. Now, I want to say something, and don't get offended and don't get insulted.
Okay.
But I already explained everything you just asked. You just have to hear the teaching again.
Oh, okay.
I explained all of that. It's not opening up anything. It's all in trying to wrap your brain around the fact that because he already knows what you will do, you've already made the choices. It's not because he's chosen you for burning and the other person for something else. You've already made the choices that end up in fire. He's already seen it play through. So the predestination thing is something Christianity hasn't understood. It's not that he predetermines and puts you on a path. He already knows what you do in the future. The time is not the thing. Okay? So he picks you knowing what you will do and leaves others alone knowing what they would do if he had picked them what they would do anyway.
Because
okay?
time's not linear.
Because time's not linear to him, it's
That
linear
makes
to
sense.
us.
Okay.
Okay? It's not linear to him, it's linear to us. All right? He already knows the end. How does he know the end? He's already seen it play out. okay? Because he's able to understand it and see it play out. So, great question. I understand where it's coming from, but because this is running upstream against all that stuff that you've been well churched in, you didn't receive it as clearly. Go back and listen to it a few times. It's all there. And listen to the Afterburn.
Okay.
Okay? So you didn't open up anything. I actually fully addressed that in what I said.
I was trying very hard to process it all.
I understand. Some of these things just take a while because it's swimming upstream against something that had been beaten in for so long. Okay, give it to Christine from Christina. You're sitting in the Christine row.
Christina, everything that you were asking is exactly what I was thinking and wondering too. So I'm going to have to go back and listen to probably this entire teaching on Romans. So
Okay, but just that whole idea when I started off with that whole thing about him ordaining beforehand. Okay, and he actually explains it. He says because he knew what they would do. Because he ordained beforehand, knowing that he would call them, knowing that if he called them, they would do the righteous works so that they would get esteem. But he already you got to remember, we're not thinking linearly through this. We're thinking he called them because and the only reason this all works is because he ordained them to do it. They've been selected to do it. No, he called them knowing they would do it. That's a whole hard thing for us to wrap our brain around. Okay? He picked Jacob knowing Esau wouldn't go that way. All right? Not because Jacob didn't go that way because he picked him. He picked him because he knew he would go that way.
So he saw the potential?
He sees our potential. He knows what you're going to, he sees the end from the beginning. When he disturbed your peace, he knew exactly what you would do from that point until the kingdom. He's already seen all the way to the New Jerusalem and everything. He's already has all that. He's already seen it all play out. That's how when he says he knows the end from the beginning, it literally means he knows how things are going to end already. Not just in the big picture, in everybody's life. He knows your life. He's seen it all play out. And so he called you and picked you knowing, that's a big psh. The camera might not have been on it, but she was like, pow, that just blew my face up in my head, a bang. All right? But we have to wrap our brains around that different thing, okay? Jacob didn't do what he did, or David didn't do it because he was selected. He was selected because Yahweh knew what he would do. Moses was selected because he knew what he would do, okay? All of these things happened because he already knew how that would play out. This is why we went, instead of going to Reuben, who was first, it works all the way down to Joseph. And Joseph didn't even get the choice. He had it already go down to Ephraim and Manasseh. Because Yahweh wanted to make sure that the ones he knew that would do what he knew they would do. Okay? Even Judas, Yeshua said to him, you were selected to do this. Why? Not because he was cursed and he had no choice in it. Yahweh knew that he would do it. And so it was his job and his role to do. It wasn't like he had no choice. He was picked because he would make the choice. Yahweh knew the choice he would make. Somebody had to do it. And Yahweh already knew. By the way, Yahweh knew that before Yeshua came in the flesh. He actually knew it before the earth was created. Because as a lamb was slain before the foundation of the earth, he understood all this stuff. You've heard me say this. Remember the story I told you? This is my story, right? This is my delusion. I believe before anything was created, in John 1:1, when it says the Word and the Father, that Yeshua came to the Father and said, hey, I'd like to create something, right? We've had this story. I haven't told it in a long time. Okay, I want to create something. And I believe that the Father said, because the Father, it doesn't say the Son does, but the Father knows the end from the beginning. And the Father said, well, Son, if you do that, these creatures you're going to make, these human beings are going to do this and do that and mess us all up. And for you to ultimately have what you want, which is to live forever with these guys, you're going to have to die for them and redeem them and all this other stuff. Are you willing to do that? That's being slain from before the foundation of the earth. And it says that the Father had to be willing to give his only begotten Son. And he says, and I've got to be willing to do that. I think that whole conversation happened before it all started. Because the Father could say, Son, yes, if you want to do this, and he laid it all out from this is what's going to happen. All this is exactly what's going to happen. Are you still wanting to go forward knowing this is going to happen? Now does that make some more sense for everybody? And so in that plan, he was going to come in the flesh. In that plan, he was going to get betrayed. In that plan, he was going to get scourged. And all. In that plan, all that stuff was already there because the Father could see it play out. And he had to be willing to do that before they even started the project, knowing all that. Wow, right? And that's how all the verses fit together that we read, where it says that, he would be willing to give, his only begotten son, and where it says that the lamb was slain even before the foundation of earth. All these things pieced together, him knowing the end from the beginning. And so the thing with predestination is that he picked you knowing your destination. How's that? You're doing it, he knew where you would go, where you were destined to be. If he gave you that eye-opening, ear-opening experience and opened your heart, he knew what you would do. So knowing that he he had pre-knowledge of your destination, he then knew when to call you. He knew what you would then do and what you would embrace and where you'd end up. Does that make sense? So it's not like we have no free will, which is what the predestination people would say. It's because he already knows the choices you'll make because of your free will that he has called you to do what you're going to do. I know that's kind of real hard to wrap the brain around fully. Okay? Where's the mic? Okay, so Christina and then the gentleman behind you.
Okay, so the other thing that came into play with the whole idea behind predestination and understanding it from a biblical Torah perspective is that if he knows the beginning from the end and the end from the beginning, and he knows everything, then he knows what we're going to go through.
Yep.
That we're going to suffer.
Yep.
And then
hold on.
Go ahead.
What's the verse say? He says, I will not allow you to go through anything that you can't handle, because he knows. I also will not put you in anything that I don't provide a way of escape, because he knows. So we have verses that tell you exactly what you just said, that says he knows.
Precisely. And so, and not only that, but the thing that you were saying in the scripture where it says that basically that, and I'll probably screw it all up with the way I'm saying it, but that we'll go through all of the suffering that we go through because he will choose. Like when you said that the Jews went through all their suffering and he did it in the time that he wanted to and showed that so that his esteem could be made.
Yep.
And so in each of our lives, we'll be going through the same kind of suffering that Yeshua did, that the Jewish people did, that everyone in the Bible has, so that he will come in the moment that he wants, that he chooses to esteem us, to esteem himself. I misspoke. To esteem himself and bring glory
through
to
what he
himself.
does to us.
Through what he does to us.
And through us, yes.
Okay, well then it makes it a lot easier to deal with the suffering.
Yes. Okay, hand the mic to the gentleman behind you.
I'm a guest, but this is my first time here. But I just love what you said.
Well, introduce yourself first. What's your name?
Ken Bishop.
Okay.
What you said, I truly agree with. But I wanted to just add as a highlight that if we in today, and we don't see ourselves written in the Bible or the Word, but we can trust to know that even though we may be talking to a friend or have, in my case, in days past, I didn't know that I was going to become anointed with the spirit of understanding until I was 60 some odd years old. If I had believed all my life that I wasn't chosen, I would have been wrong. So the good news is that we may all be predestined to have that choice. Some people should not talk themselves out of it. We should all think that we all have the opportunity to come to know the Word.
Amen. Okay, and that takes everybody to which everybody's favorite teaching? The millennium in the kingdom. where it explains exactly what he just said, that everybody gets their chance and their opportunity. It's just at his discretion, okay? There is a plan for everyone, just like he said, so everybody should always have that hope, and we should have that hope for all of our family members, that they will get their opportunity, and how that all plays out is in the Millennium and Kingdom teaching, okay? Part 4. No, I'm kidding. Okay. No, it's in the earlier parts. Okay, are we done on live stream, or did you get any more? No, we're good? All right. Let's go ahead and get the mic to Rob. He's going to close us. To get the children,